So I guess we're going to start with some introductions. We can start with some introductions. I'll introduce myself. My name is Donovan Carter. I'm a research assistant with the Samuel Proctor Oral History program. Actually just graduated from the University of Florida along with my friend Krystin Anderson. We're both just recent graduates of the University of Florida. I graduated with my MA in Latin American Studies, and I'll be working on this project for some time, and so really super excited to be here. Krystin?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Krystin Anderson. I'm also a recent graduate of the University of Florida with my bachelor's in anthropology with a focus on culture and a minor in ethnomusicology, which is basically culture and music history combined. And I've been researching with SPOP for the past 2 years, and I have the pleasure of being one of the coordinators for this year's Mississippi Fieldwork Project. That is our annual fieldwork trip through SPOP through the Mississippi River Delta, following some civil rights history, meeting with descendants of racialized violence and different families of survivors of many things, but the main two that we meet with are those of the Elaine Massacre and the community in Glendora family of Emmett Till.
Well, I'll introduce myself, of course, again, Sheri Jackson with the National Park Service Network to Freedom Program. And met Bruce years ago. He's a faithful attendee at our past conferences. And of course, I met you all back in January. So all right, let's get started. And so I'm going to turn my camera off and we'll just go from there. You're in control, Donovan, today?
It seems so. I'm trying to keep this plane from going down, but yes. Thanks so much again, Bruce. This has been super excited to hear from you. We don't have too many questions for you, so this interview shouldn't take nearly as long as the last one. So we're going to, with a short introduction of yourself. Can you tell us, remind the people who you are?
Yeah, so I'm a psychologist by trade. Founded a community-based organization called the Love More Movement, and the mission is to heal from past trauma and move to transformation through a vibration of love. So we and it's intergenerational. Our oldest, I think, is 94. Youngest is like 2. So we believe that we have to heal together. That's the solution to many of our problems is healing from past trauma. And then that's where it starts at. So we kind of use the metamorphosis of the caterpillar to the butterfly as our guiding metaphor for the entire piece. Like if you trust love enough to enter your cocoon for transformation, then you're gonna come out flying. Right? But so yeah, and it's that's really like we have a movement now, and also wrote a curriculum for life coaching. So to kind of break the stigma from mental health. So instead of calling it therapy, we just say transformation, and you're becoming a life coach, committing to healing yourself, your family, your community. And so we go through a process, and then you come out as a life coach, and you go back in the community, and then you work with other people and helping them heal. So that's really what I'm have been up to. We have a cultural movement called the Overground Freeway. Whereas the Underground Railroad was about physical freedom, the Overground Freeway is about mental liberation. So same way we have stations, we try to form stations the same way. And my family in Canada, with the Shad family, going from my own genealogy, I go back into the Underground Railroad and find my Underground Railroad family, basically. And there's a lot of connections. So we have stations for the Overground Freeway that way.
Wow. That's amazing. I really like the term you used, Overground Freeway, the mental liberation, how you have different stations. And I remember you mentioned that before, and that's something that I think is very, unique and powerful. So I think my first question, you touched on a little bit. You touched a bit on your family's genealogy. Could you, talk a little bit more about that? And could you start with yourself, maybe your siblings, your parents, and then could you go back maybe that way?
Right. Yeah. So my parents, and so my father's side is connected to the Underground Railroad. My mother's side goes to North Carolina, and my father is that's DC, Washington DC, up to Canada. So my father's grandparents were, well, my father's father was Lee Julian Purnell, who he was actually retired dean of engineering at Howard University, and his father was William Whipper Purnell, who was a surgeon. He was a doctor, and he married Theodore Lee, which was John Jones from Chicago. That was his granddaughter. So, and William Whipper Purnell's parents were James Whipper Purnell, who was Secretary DeMont Delaney in the Back to Africa movement when it was seemed like, what were we going to do? Were we going to go to Africa or not? And also was at the John Brown's convention in Chatham, Canada. They were together and kind of organizing that piece. And James Whipper Purnell married Julia Shadd, that's the Shadd family. Him and Marianne Shadd were, Julia were cousins, and Marianne actually lived with them on the time. And his parent, well, her mother was Absalom Shadd, who had he had a restaurant in DC, but during that Turner's rebellion, he couldn't even sit at his own counter at the restaurant that he owned. So he moved back to Chatham and got a farm right next to Abraham Shadd, which was Marianne Shadd's father. So him and Osborne Anderson and Absalom Shadd ran the farm in Chatham. That's where they had the John Brown meetings. And as you know, Osborne Anderson was the only one that escaped the Harper's Ferry raid with John Brown. And he's the one who told the story about what happened. And that was Osborne Anderson. So the James Whipper Purnell was kind of raised by William Whipper, who was a Underground Railroad station master in Philadelphia. And even though that was his nephew, he was raised as his son. And they had a lumber yard, and they actually had a real railroad. And him and Stephen Smith, they would, have boxcars that were empty, and they were moving enslaved people or freedom seekers, across with the railroad. And they also they were the first, not founders, but co-founders of the Don settlement in Southern Ontario. That's where Uncle Tom's Cabin was, and they had a community that was the real Uncle Tom's Cabin, and in Dresden, in Southern Ontario, and they had businesses. He had a hotel, the cleaners, and different businesses and stuff. But it was a thriving community going in Dresden. It was Dresden, Chatham, and then Buxton, where we had the reunion every year. We had a Buxton reunion every Labor Day. So that's that side. And so you got the Shadds. And okay, then like I said, William Whipper Purnell married Theodore Lee, which was John Jones's granddaughter. So John and Mary Jones in Chicago were station masters also in Chicago. And their daughter was Lavinia. Lavinia Jones married Theodore Lee. And Theodore Lee was the grandson of William Billy Lee, who was enslaved by George Washington. And he was the only one that got his freedom when George Washington died. But he was his valet almost. He rode in the American Revolutions with him. He, fox hunts and all of that stuff, but was invisible. Was invisible because he was Black, basically. But he's in a couple of pictures now. And if you go to Mount Vernon, you'll see William Billy Lee, his piece. But so his grandson married Lavinia, and they had one daughter, which was Theodore Lee, who became Theodore Lee Purnell when she married William Whipper Purnell.
Wow, that's quite something. That's something. And it seems that you mentioned it before, how it spans like from like kind of the DC Eastern Shore area all the way up to Canada. So, and you said where were those where you went to your family reunions during Labor Day? Where were those?
Okay, so every Labor Day, the Buxton reunions is Buxton, Ontario, and Brian Prince, who has quite a few books about the about Underground Railroad and the Canada history, is the steward of that space, which is a cousin, but that's the Shad side, the Shad, the Princes, and we all like, that's that family, and they kind of preserve that culture.
Mm. Wow.
But Buxton, Chatham was where the John Brown, like when they had the meetings, when they came and they really planned the Harper's Ferry raid and stuff, that happened in Chatham. And Buxton and Chatham, maybe 15 minutes away. But both Absalom Shad and Abraham Shad, which was Marianne Shad's father, like they both had farms next to each other. They were brothers. And the Shads, they had, so Hans Shad, who came, he was a mercenary from from Germany, and he got wounded. They were actually fighting the French. He was being paid by the British then, and he got wounded, and he married, then Elizabeth brought him in, which was and they couldn't get married, but they were really a couple, so they had two children, Hans and Jeremiah. Hans, he went to Florida, and we don't see him. He lived as a white man in Florida, and Jeremiah had like 12 children, and maybe 15 children, and that was all the Shads and almost everybody connected to like an Underground Railroad.
Wow. That's incredible.
And that was 1700s Delaware, like 1790s, 1780s in Delaware, like Delaware and stuff. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's a lot of connection. That's just, wow. Family is intertwined with history in so many ways. So in your life, how did you learn these stories about all of your family and your connections? Did you hear these stories growing up, or how did this work?
So my father used to talk about John Jones and the fact that, he had to ride. So when he was born, like he was indentured, basically he was born free to protect him from being enslaved. And he's in Tennessee, but when the person he was indentured to, when he died, the siblings tried to enslave him, said that was never the case. He was their slave. So he rode through the night to North Carolina to get his freedom papers, and he came back and they had trial and stuff. And so my father used to talk about that. Oh yeah, you ride like John Jones to the middle of the night, and so we hear the stories and stuff. I didn't know what it meant right then, and really until later on. And being in DC, that probably it may even save my life, truthfully, because all the things going on, that's probably what pulled me out of it. Like, because it was, like you almost had to be a part of some crew or gang, like, or if not, then you got to explain why. Like, so having that why as to why I'm not participating in this, because, that was the narrative that was going, if you wasn't hustling, you wasn't nobody at a certain point. So it was like, nah, like, I got to have, accountability to something else. And I think that, as I started to learn more, it's like, wow, this thing was about liberation. It wasn't about chasing paper money. It was about freedom. And, I felt like we've been misdirected to something else, like, the pursuit of something else that made no sense. And being socialized to be a consumer. So I had to think about that too. Like, what is it you want from me? Or you want me to be a consumer? Like, I have to go through you to get everything I need, like, which is love. I have to try to buy love through this process, and I'm never going to get it. But I'm always going to be searching for it. And if I don't have any money to buy, then I'm nobody. So, even dealing with that piece, like, that's the other side of it. Like, what was this? Like, how did it become this? And going back, I'm like, wow, like, my ancestors have been through too much for me to just give this up for this. Like, it doesn't even make sense. So I didn't mind being the weird one at that point. Like, it's like I'd rather be the weird one than, part of the commercial.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I get that. And I kind of, I understand, like what you said earlier about holdings being accountable for something else other than, how you describe like consumerism, and rather being the mission of your ancestors and the people who came before you. I think that's amazing, inspiring. So you kind of mentioned people saying things in your house like, oh, running like John Jones in the middle of the night. What kind of other things did you hear? Did you also hear about your Shad connections in your home? Did you hear about the Lees and Purnells in the same way? Or
As I started to ask questions, like my father started to really just tell me because, what was going on. But, because I didn't initially, my father and his father, they didn't see eye to eye on a whole lot because of the third marriage kind of like, that piece put a rift in the entire family. And so, my father kind of just disconnected. He didn't talk about it too much until I started to ask. And we used to go to Howard University, and I got to study engineering department, and people told me stories about my grandfather and stuff. And then when I went to the med school, and they pulled out like information about his father, like so it was my great grandfather, and I got to see his grades when he was in med school, and he was faculty, and he taught, and he was mentored by Furman Shad, which is my uncle. And when they had Freedman's Hospital, he was the first secretary. Him and Purvis was the president, and he was the secretary. So I got to read this stuff, and I was like, wow, it changed. It just my life. I was like, wow, like they were doctors then, and we don't learn that we had they were doctors then, like
yeah.
We don't really learn they were free people doing slavery. They were free Black people, like, and doing things. They were having conventions trying to determine like how we were going to move out of this. Entire conventions, like they were having all in different states, and so as I started, so the conversation with me and my father was, we had some deep conversations about it. The more I asked, the more he gave me, and one day he just gave me a duffel bag. It was just full of pictures, and
Wow.
letters. Like I got letters from Frederick Douglass to John Jones, handwritten letters, and just, it's different things. I'm like, wow, he's like, look, you're going to be the one that cares about this. Like, you're going to be the one that, make sure that your future generations know their story and who they are and what they meant. And one time we traveled to so in Chicago, the Sonic Lodge is John Jones number 7. So I was like 14 to 15, we traveled there, and I got to see his picture up and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, and meet the all the people and stuff. And that's probably why I became a Mason, and just I knew I was, because from the time of always my 5th great grandfather, they all were, so it kind of led my journey. Even what I'm doing now, I'm like, look, this is the overground freeway. That's the whole purpose. The purpose is still everybody gets to experience liberation. And unless all of us free, none of us are free. So having that kind of mentality, so it comes from there.
Wow. That's amazing. So, okay. Well, Krystin, do you have anything you want to ask?
Yeah, so that's a big commission that you received. Wow, with all of those documents and really kind of holding that history. Do you find that your siblings or cousins steward this history in a similar way?
Because, on my father's side, it's because it was, so my grandfather was the only child. My father, he had with 2 sisters, but they didn't have any children. it's just me and my brother and our children. Like, it's no more on from that line. It's no other. We we don't have cousins and stuff like that. And on the Shad side, I mean, the Shads are connected to. Almost all of them are connected. Adrian Shad, she's writing books about it, and really, yeah, they all connected too, and on the Canada side, and they really promoting the story. But I didn't meet them, but through genealogy. Like later on, I said, "Wow!" Like I met them through stuff like that. Hey, these are my cousins, and I went to the first reunion, and so Gwen was like, man, she was the executive director for the Chatham Kent Historical Society. And so we went in the office, and she pulled out like these books, and she's like, "We was wondering where you was." She's like, "We stopped at William Whipper Purnell and Theodore Shad. We didn't know we knew we was in DC, but we didn't know." And that was a big moment, because it's like, wow, like one, I see where we're connected, and she started to get information and stuff, and we're like written, we've been written into history literally. And then like finally, oh, you need to meet, here's your cousin, here's your uncle, here's, I'm meeting all these people. Like, wow, I have a whole family, like a family reunion happening in Canada. I didn't know about.
Wow. Yeah. Now, okay, two questions. First, do you still have the duffel bag? Do you still have the bag? Like, do you still have this? Okay. Wow. And what is your, like, when you think, you mentioned the letters between like Frederick Douglass and John John. I know if I saw that may be my favorite thing in the bag. But what is your favorite thing in the bag? What's some of your favorite things?
There's a picture of Frederick Douglass where he's over John Jones' house. It's just like me sitting somewhere. Just you could tell it's just I'm like, wow, like this moment, and but then the pictures of them in 1830s actually it's one. There's one picture. Let me see. I can share a screen. I'm gonna show you just one picture that is my favorite. Let me grab it real quick. Hold on.
Oh, you can show us as many things as
yes. Show as many as you like, please.
Yeah.
I'm finished this book, and I did this dedication, but it's in there, so I can pull it easily. Let me see. It's one, and this is a rough version of it because they redid it for it's going to be in Obama's museum in Chicago, and they did a refinish on it that's unbelievable. But this is them, and their story is when he came back and went to trial, and they decided that he was a free man. Like so, Mary Jones was Mary Richardson, which was the love of his life. Like they were free in Tennessee, and her parents were. Her father was a blacksmith, but because it got so bad in Tennessee, they moved to Alton, which was supposed to be a free state. Even though Alton, that's where Lovejoy was murdered in Alton, because Alton was a lot of slave catchers to Alton. But when he got back to Tennessee with the trial, he went to Alton and got married Richardson, and they got married. And so that this was then, and they went to Chicago with $3 in their pocket. And so that picture is that's them when they were like they were in their late 20s. And so that's probably the most like if I were to say like the one that meant the most was this picture right here. And they had so here's other piece.
And if you could clarify, that's your grandfather or great grand?
That's John Jones, so it's my fourth great grandfather. He's the one that was a station master in Chicago. Yeah. He was born in 1816.
Wow.
November the 1st. I was born November the 2nd. He was born November the 1st. Like, I feel like I have a
Wow.
big connection with my family.
Wait, you said November 2nd? When is his birthday?
What's that?
You said yours is the first and his is the second.
Oh, mine's the 2nd. His is the
Just a
1st.
second. Oh wow, mine is the first. I'm gonna be first too. That's
Oh, wow.
crazy. So
Yeah. And these are some of these other pieces, like even if you can't see it now, but these are the freedom papers from him and Mary. This is and this wasn't handwritten, but this was like John Jones and Frederick Douglass, some pieces that were
wow,
pictures of him.
wow.
And that's like, these are ones from the 1800s.
Resemblance between yourself and your family.
I can see it. I can see it. It's it's definitely yeah. I see it.
Yeah.
Well, this is the one that they redid. What's that name? Can't read it right. You can see they took all the spots out of it, and this was a cup he received from the Masonic Lodge. See, that's after they redid it.
Did he? I see. It looks like on the jacket there. Do you know?
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what. Yeah, I know he was a tailor. That's his thing. Like, he was auditioned to be a tailor, so he was making all like the clothes before he got into real estate. And it's funny because David Whelan, so his ancestor, L.C. Freer, he was a lawyer then, and they had this society, but he's the one that actually taught John Jones to read. But we connect now, and we're actually working on a movie, a docudrama. But we connect, and we just like, Dad, we get to talk about what our ancestors were doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
There's a few John Joneses. Is your name influenced by any of your ancestral family as well?
Yeah, so Bruce, my father's mother's side is the Bruces, like Blanche Bruce and different ones, like, so they were also like prominent. So the Bruce family in DC, that was, and that's what I'm named after. I don't know why Anthony, I think they just think the Anthony part, they thought Bruce Anthony just sounded good, like, so Anthony my middle name, and then the Purnell and the history of our line of Purnells and what that was, but the Bruce side was from the Bruce family.
It's so cool. So I kind of want to ask, I guess, one more question about expanding across, like, so you said from DC to Canada, and John Jones ends up in Chicago, and you mentioned, I believe, Tennessee as well, and North Carolina and South Carolina. So where are all the Purnells at now? So how far does it spread? Does it go? Is anyone out west? Do you have any kinfolk who are out west now? Maybe down in Texas, or who are,
Yeah, I mean, we have William. So for William Whipper, like, so the Whippers, like, and which is so we had William James Whipper, who was named after William Whipper, who actually went to Charleston, South Carolina, and was a judge. But from then, it came Ionia Whipper, who was came back to Howard University, she started but she was a doctor, but she started a home for girls who were pregnant. And that still exists today. The Ionia Whipper home exists. Like, we have people in Edina, Minnesota, was founded by even though it's a white Jewish community now, it was founded by it was the only that would be not Gillespie, that would have been Yancey. But my grandmother was Ellen Bruce, who married them, and they went like in 1840s and founded this community out there, the farmers and stuff like that. And that's where my father's mother grew up. So we have people like, this night really all over the country. Like, so we have family in New York. We have people in New York. We have people going all the way down to South Carolina. We got people out west in Washington State, Minnesota. So yeah, we all over the place. A bunch of people in Canada, few in Chicago, but that's where I think I want to be buried, in Chicago, because at Graceland Cemetery, I mean, it's beautiful. Like you see, like John and Mary Jones, Lavinia and Theodore is there. And thus, like, I was like, wow, this is where I want to be. But and so, but yeah, so like we have family, all over, really all over the country now. And it's interesting because doing the Underground Railroad, you had to be very quiet about what you were doing. So like that's why I can see. I wonder how did Theodore Jones could marry Bruce Purnell, like, but that's Philadelphia, Chicago back then. You figure like how did you travel like to the point where they knew each other that well? But they moved the conventions and that they were having and the papers and stuff, and they were on it. And I was like, wow, it's amazing that they were traveling that far and that connected then. But it shows, because how could would they be married if they didn't know each other that well? And there's different things also, that it was like the William Whipper did the eulogy for Wilberforce, like, and that's still like really the only Black institution that was funded by Black people, like, it's but
Yeah,
but then,
Wilberforce.
like, yeah. So they, it's so much, but like it's like wow, like really that we need to know, like, and that, to me, it goes into who we are, and that it was bigger, is bigger than what we think it is, like, and it's even the thought behind like what we should be doing now, like, so I believe that our children should be smiling now, like our children should be excited about tomorrow. It shouldn't be like we're living to avoid the next traumatic episode. Like, we've been through too much for it to be that right now. And by knowing this, we know that. Like, it's like, really, we're not, we're going to shift, and connect another way. And also, the idea that we don't love each other. How could somebody who's been through all that we've been through be led to believe that we don't love each other? We've been through too much, and we don't trust each other, which is the narrative now, kind of like, if you had to leave and from Maryland Eastern Shore and make it to Canada and trust people you never met before with your life, how can anybody convince those people that they don't trust, that they're not capable of trusting each other? Like, it doesn't make, so yeah.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing. I think I'm out of questions. Yeah, that was really, really good. Thank you so much, Bruce. Krystin, do you have anything else?
I do have one more. I know you mentioned that you are 5th generation Mason, I believe. Do you know if your family also has any Eastern Stars or any of the MPC organizations?
Yeah. So Mary Jones was an Eastern Star. So the same way, like, it's just it's been in the family history, and everybody kind of knew,
Connected all the way through. And did your family do any of the NPHC organizations, the Divine Nine, as well?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, all those different connections. It was almost not the standard narrative, but it was like expected. It was expected, like, yeah. And even the formation of different societies just to deliver missions, like, to them, say, look, we're going to be about this, and ends up being the connection. Like I was reading stuff about, so Mary Jones, she was Ida B. Wells' mentor, and they had a society, like, and they used to meet and stuff, and it kind of determined, like, you know, how they will move forward and stuff. And yeah, it's like we had purpose, you know, it was a purpose, like, you know, it was a purpose, and people would get, you know, their instructions from their elders, and what they was going to carry out. Yeah.
That's right. Wow. So awesome. Sheri, do you have any questions?
No, all of my questions were answered. Bruce, when you had talked about the book that you're writing and the movie, I was just thinking about setting up the next generation, you know, and then the duffel bag, all of the materials, the letters, the pictures, all of that is, so they will have to go through, I guess, finding out bits and pieces. Seems like you've done all the research, and now to put all of that information in one entity so they'll be able to look. But it's just amazing. I don't know, you're the first person that I've met with so much history, and that itself is just an amazing legacy. And I really do appreciate what all you're doing. So thank you.
I feel the same. Thank y'all. Like I feel the same way. Like this has to have a pathway to mean something.
Yeah.
You know, and as I look at my children, like in these communities, it's like they want to know a why. Like, you know, telling me to do this stuff. Why? Like, what does this mean? And you know, they need an answer to what we're doing here. Like, what's going on? What's going on with y'all adults? Like, you know, y'all don't look happy. Like, you want me to do what y'all doing? No, y'all don't look too happy. Like,
that's right. Kids, the young folks, they can definitely tell. That's for sure. They know what you think.
yeah, that's right. So I really appreciate what y'all doing, though. So yeah, just count me in, whatever you know you may need, and whatever you.
Absolutely. And definitely keep us abreast of the book you said you were writing and the manuscripts and stuff. So keep us posted on that. We want to hear more from you, more about that. So.
Excellent.
But my understanding is that you were going to share some of those resources so that we be able to include them in the interview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody said they were going to contact me, and so whenever they do, like, however we do that and decide how that go, then yeah, that'll be fine.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. All right.
Take care.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.